Welcome to Real Stories in Real Estate. I'm your host for today, Nicola Evans with LaFramboiseMortgage.ca. Today, I'm joined by Marlene Doss. Marlene's a lawyer who specializes in real estate transactions and estate planning as well. So thanks so much for being here, Marlene. I'm so happy that we're going to get to chat.
Thanks so much for having me, Nicolee. I'm excited to be here.
And Marlene and I have been working together for quite a few years, and recently reconnected and sat down and chatted. And we have a lot of similarities within our businesses. Like one area that I specialize in is financing for people who are going through a separation or divorce. And that's something that Marlene's particularly passionate about as well. So we wanted to chat today a bit about what people need to know and need to get in line when you are going through this really tumultuous time in your life to make sure that you're set up for success in the future. So Marlene, you do all kinds of real estate transactions, but this is an area that people often, even if they've owned homes before, they've gone through real estate transaction, it's something that people aren't really aware of what the next stages are. So in your experience and in your practice, like what do you see like the steps of going through a real estate transaction post real estate post divorce and separation that people should know?
Well, I think some of the things that they should know are, their rights and their obligations as well, right? So,
Yeah.
often in these situations, there's only one party that's entitled to the property,
Yeah.
and that can be, a little confusing depending on what stage of the game they're at, right? So, if they've just separated and maybe exploring options, possibly don't even have a family lawyer yet, and whatever, then and often the primary home, is one of their biggest assets.
Like absolutely. Like for everyone, like entering into a purchase, especially with somebody else, oftentimes people aren't looking at what's going to happen if like that doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So, people enter into purchases of properties with their spouse, with a partner, sometimes with a friend, but always with good intentions. Like they think that everything's going to go well. And we do see that, like where only one party is on title. Sometimes it's that the property was acquired prior to that relationship. And sometimes it's just that maybe one partner's working and the other's not. Maybe they're staying home with kids, and like different bits and pieces. So if someone has come to you at that point in time, like I think probably you recommend a family lawyer is very important. But once that's in place, like, and an asset is being sold or someone's taking over the mortgage, and the ownership of that, it is important that your real estate lawyer you're working with knows all those aspects of things, right, Marlene? Like, and what do you ask your clients when they come to you at that point in time?
For any real estate transaction, one of the first questions is, what's your marital status, or
Yeah.
what's your relationship status, so that we know what's what, right? And we
Yeah.
know who needs to get consents and who needs to sign off on things. But if they're coming to me at the stage where they've either signed the separation agreement or they're almost there and home is going to be listed soon, etc., then I feel like my role is to navigate both sides of the relationship where
Yeah.
possible, right? So
Yeah.
you know, where possible, I encourage them to use one lawyer for the transaction. And
Definitely makes things easier because you have
yeah,
all the information in front of you and you can advise both clients separately and also
yeah,
together. Because one thing that we see as well, in these situations is where someone that we've got a couple who is separating and they've sold the property and they both want to purchase as soon as possible, which can make things really challenging on the purchase side because this is two separate purchases and
yeah,
one sale. So having one lawyer handling all of these transactions really does help with the clarity of where like proceeds of sale are going, like who's
right.
entitled to what. And, I know it's hard to do that, especially when things are dissolving and like when things is dissolving, oftentimes people aren't on the same page. But if you have a lawyer who's handling all of those transactions, the clarity is really good. So you
Yeah.
like when you're in that situation, Marlene, and you are handling both the sale and some purchases, you as the lawyer, you're handling each client separately as well, right? So like
Mm.
the clarity is there for you and for your clients so that it keeps things moving forward. Because,
Yeah.
you mentioned separation agreements, which from a mortgage perspective, people need to have a separation agreement in place to get a mortgage on a future property, because that is the document that really affords the clarity as to who is entitled to how much and when that's happening. So we always tell our clients, we can help you and we can do pre-approvals and get like ideas of mortgages, but until that separation agreement is in place, which is a family lawyer thing, which
Yeah.
is not you, but like you work with a lot of family lawyers, but
Yeah.
until that's in place, like there's no clarity on the proceeds of sale. And for, I would say, 90% of people, you need that clarity because that is where your money's tied up. So,
That's right. Yes.
yeah,
It instructs us on what we need to do as well, and especially if they each have their own family lawyers, then the separation agreement and the family lawyers will say, where the proceeds of the sale are gonna go and
yeah,
who's paying for the legal fees, who's paying the commission for the broker, right?
yeah,
All the things, if one person sometimes the transaction is just one partner transferring title to the other, right?
absolutely. Yeah, with a spousal
Yeah.
buyout. But
Yeah, exactly.
the reality of the situation, legally, you can't just transfer titles willy-nilly. Like, to your point earlier, is that even if only one person is on title of that matrimonial home, like family law dictates who actually, like the ownership piece, it's not always just what's on title. So the
Right.
clarity of that is incredibly important. By the time people come to you and you're handling this real estate transaction, you need that. I need that. We all
Yeah.
need, and clients need to make sure that they're fully aware of what's happening with that, because that's the legality of it all, right?
Yeah.
So
The time from separation to when we actually get to that point can be lengthy. And that's why I just want to emphasize the importance of reaching out to a family lawyer,
yeah.
especially if you're not on title, to make
Hmm.
sure that your interest is protected. And
Yeah.
especially if the other party is not necessarily going to act above board and you have concerns about protecting your interests, there's steps that the family lawyers can take to put things on title to make everybody aware. So when I'm dealing with the transaction and I'm coming to sell it or do a transfer or whatever it is, things will pop up in the title searches that will
Yes.
notify me whether this is, there's pending litigation that's on this matter, whether this is something where spousal rights are an issue.
Yeah.
And that'll alert the real estate lawyers to know what they cannot do. So
Absolutely.
really important, even if you're just at the beginning of these stages, which can be very overwhelming, right? Especially if it's, sometimes
Incredibly. Yeah.
young children and they're just starting this process and they're just overwhelmed and, you know, feeling hit by a few trucks
And I
to get
think that like
started.
what you've said about timelines is so important, Marlene, because
Yeah,
I have a lot of clients come to us, and I'm sure you do as well, who have either made a decision or have been a decision's been made for them. They've come to terms with that. Like they've gone through the emotional processing of that situation, and then they're ready. And they're like, okay, I want this to be done now.
right.
Unfortunately, even if you're feeling personally and emotionally ready to move forward, there are still legal steps that need to
Yes.
be taken to ensure that everyone's interests are protected and everything is done as fairly as possible to move forward. Because I do have clients often that are like, I'm just done. I'm like, I get that. And like when you get a lot of the information, I can appreciate that. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, timelines uh, are dictated by both parties still. And, we can play a game of hurry up and wait, which is how I describe it. Like we'll get everything we can to a point, and as different documentations become available, like a separation agreement, like the clarity on if there's a spousal buyout, if there's clarity on the property being sold, when that property is in fact sold, making sure that that a division of the proceeds of that sale go through as outlined by that separation agreement. It is a multi-step like process. One thing that it's at this point in time for us, when I have clients who are purchasing together, especially if they're purchasing with a partner and they're not legally married, I'm like encouraging cohabitation agreements, which I can't do, obviously, not a lawyer, but like, are you
Yeah.
seeing more cohabitation agreements, less, or about the same recently? Because you
I
would
am.
set that up, right? Like that a
Yeah.
cohab agreement would be something that you would set up,
Yeah.
Marlene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So especially when you're in a common law relationship, as you said, it is very important.
Yeah.
People don't realize there's a few things under real estate law as well as under estate law. So when somebody passes away and, things like that happen, common law spouses are not treated the same way as legally married spouses. And a lot of people don't realize that there's such a difference there, that if it's
Yeah.
not actually outlined properly in the cohabitation agreement, like what will happen if this relationship dissolves. Sometimes only one of the parties, even in that situation, can only be on title, right? For
Mhm.
mortgage reasons or whatever it is. So you need something that actually stipulates what's what and
Yeah.
offers you the protection, but also it's smart because the more you set up from the beginning, not that anybody, as you said, is aiming for anything to end or for anything to go south, but if somebody does pass away, if
Mhm.
there are children involved, if the relationship does dissolve for one or many reasons, having that set up from the beginning makes the end easier, smoother, cheaper, all of it.
Yeah.
Everything, you know?
And for what we do with mortgages and what you do with real estate law, the longer that I'm doing this, and we're almost, I think, 9 years in now, and Marlene, I think you've been doing this for a similar amount of time, maybe little bit longer. But it's funny. I don't ever want to encourage people to assume things are going to end, but
Yeah.
everything comes to a close at
Yes.
in different ways. And I often have thought that it's so easy to do things like buy a house together. Well, like
Yes.
easy is relative, but buy a house together, even get married, all the different pieces. It's really easy to get into situations. But if you make it harder on the way in, and harder again is relative, if you set yourself up better on the way in, on the way out is a lot easier. Like it's easy to
Exactly.
get in and hard to get out, but if we made it a little harder to get in on the front end, the exit is easier as well. And I do encourage cohabitation agreements for pretty much everyone.
Yeah,
And
this is great.
it can be like a bit of a sticky situation and like a slightly uncomfortable conversation to be had, but it shouldn't be. Like,
That's right.
when we are entering into financial partnership, which is buying together, living together, getting married is a financial partnership as well as a romantic one. If we're a bit more pragmatic on the front end, it really does help people on the other end of things. And now with going through a separation or a divorce and division of assets and different things, your other area of practice is estate planning. So
Mhm.
like everyone should have estate planning, and it's another like the topics we're touching on are ones that are like hard for people to talk about a lot of the time.
Yeah.
When we go through a real estate transaction with our clients, we always ask them, do you have a will? Like,
Oh,
do you
fantastic.
have like these different bits and pieces? And the overwhelming response is no. Oh, I've been meaning to do that. Like,
Yes.
so everybody should have a will, everyone should have estate planning, but even if you have that in place, if you're going through a separation or divorce, this is another step that you need to take, right, Marlene? Like, and what do you see
Yeah.
with that?
100%. Because
Yeah.
there's as we said, the gap between when you first separate and when everything actually gets settled can be years.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And you know, if you are a spouse or a common law partner and you have young children or you have assets or whatever, chances are if you became unwell or, you know, left the country, couldn't get back in, whatever it is, and somebody needs to step in your shoes to deal with your finances, to make healthcare decisions for you.
Mhm.
If you're separated, do
Yeah,
you still want that ex-partner?
don't think so.
Yes. So a lot of people, again, because they're overwhelmed, it's a big step, like it's a
It
big
is.
and stuff like that. There's a few things that I would encourage people to definitely turn their mind to. Estate planning is definitely part of it, right? Just updating who's going to be your powers of attorneys,
Yeah.
right? Your healthcare, and if you don't have one at all, the Substitute Decision Makers Act defers. The first person that will step in as your substitute decision maker is your spouse or common law partner. If your next in line is children and they're minors, that's not going to work. There's
What parent would want their
it's
children to have to do that, right?
a horrible, yes. And we're not hoping for these things to happen, but it does. And yes, it can be infrequent, but what if it is you and it's your family? Are you willing to gamble with that? I just feel like it's such an unnecessary risk when there's such easy ways to fix these things. Even if it's temporary, even if you have to update it after you finish the process in a few years and, there's a few things that need to be changed, but it's good to have your voice there. Like, who would be your guardian of your children if you were not around?
Yeah.
Your ex-spouse, might have first entitlement to it. What if something happened to both of you simultaneously or one after the other? You should have your wish there of who would step in, who would handle your part of the estate, who would be your executor and your trustee. If you had a will in place, it probably names your common law partner or spouse.
Yeah.
Right. They would still be the ones that would step in
And
unless you update your documents. Separation and divorce do not cancel your estate plans.
that is a huge piece that people need to understand
Yes.
because
And marriage now, actually.
yeah,
It used to, but marriage doesn't either. So getting into a new relationship doesn't cancel your old stuff.
and that would like the level of awkward and
Yeah.
like
There's
that
a
that
lot.
would people have to deal with after you're gone. And
Yes.
these are, like, as I said, these are very confronting things to have to deal with in a time that is already a bit tumultuous and feeling like a huge life change. But it is so important as someone who has assets, has children, like has any aspect of life that needs clarity in a situation where you are not there to
Yeah.
provide that clarity is so important. And this is a level of adulting that a lot of people don't really want to confront.
Yeah.
But the reality of the situation is there are people who this is their job. This is their profession. There's people like Marlene who can help you navigate this situation that you probably don't want to face, but really have to and should be doing these things. Like, as I said, the number of clients that we speak with that do not have estate planning, that do not have wills, that do not have even sufficient insurance, and like all of these different pieces, especially in a situation where you're going from being a partner to being a single person, is infinitely important, especially if you've just sold a matrimonial property, purchased your own place, and
Yeah.
as setting up your life again. So, and I think that all of these aspects, it's more than just a real estate transaction. I think at the end of the day, Marlene, like, and having trusted professionals in your corner is so important to like know your rights, know what you need to be doing to protect yourself and your family. Sure.
And be able to have those conversations because
Yeah.
there's personal details that we have to get into, right? So you need to be comfortable with who you're working with
Yeah.
because the last thing you want to do is hold back and
100%. And
not divulge information that would be important for the person who's trying to assist you and represent you to know, right?
yeah.
So there has to be that level of comfort and security knowing that the person that you're speaking with is on your side and is there to help you and will be clear with you as to what they, especially if we're dealing with the sale of the property and stuff, what has to be shared with the other person, what will not be shared, right?
Yeah.
Presenting a couple that, is separated and they're or divorced and now they're selling their property, you know, I need to make them both aware that what you tell me, if it impacts this transaction, I have to share it with the other person. Like there's, the joint retainer piece is sensitive and they need to understand it, but at the same time they need to know. Yeah.
What, like, yeah, what's going to stay here and what
Yeah.
needs to be shared. And again, those are legality pieces. It's not that you are preferring like
Yeah.
to spill the beans or anything like that. You're the
Yeah.
like epitome of a professional, and you are dictated by your licensing and your
Yeah.
profession to share certain things. And it is such a sensitive time. And to be honest, Marlene, like any real estate transaction feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
like there's I've seen this form before that talks about like life stages and different things that happen and the stress level that they cause, and that it's a rating scale, and things like property transaction is very high,
Oh
things
wow.
like a divorce
Yeah.
incredibly high,
Right.
children like in different stages for children incredibly high. When someone is going through a real estate transaction that is simultaneously happening by the like dissolution of a relationship with kids involved, with like finances involved, this is potentially like all these different pieces coming together is
Yeah.
potentially the most stressful moment in your life. Like,
Very. It's
Um,
not by choice. It's not like it's a happy occasion, for a
it
lot of again,
it
for some, but uh,
But that being said, getting on the other side of these things
yeah,
with the right people, feeling
yeah,
supported throughout can be life-changing and,
100%.
in a good way as well. For myself and the LaFramboise Mortgage team, like, uh positions ourselves and always come as a partner. Like, we want to help you. And Marlene's business is the same. Marlene wants to be your partner and explain things. Like, we will take the time to make sure that you understand why things are happening, how they're going to happen, and how we're going to support you through that. And I know, having worked with Marlene for quite a lot of years, like, she operates the same way. Like, we want to make sure that clients, while they're going through this swirl of like all these different things that have to be done, that you're feeling fully supported through that.
And
It's
there are things that you can take, like as we said, there are other steps that you can take in the very beginning stages to protect your real estate asset and whatever. I mean, we spoke about, when there's only one person on title, but if you are jointly on title, there's another step that you can take from a real estate side to, again, protect your interests, right? Because
yeah,
when people are jointly on title and one person passes away,
yeah,
the other party gets it by right of survivorship,
yeah,
right? But what you can do, and I think a lot of people don't realize this. I know there's a lot of family lawyers that speak to their clients once they're engaged in it, but the clients are still hesitant to do it.
yeah.
It's severing the joint tenancy, which basically makes you tenants in common.
Common, yeah.
And it's important because if you are the one that passes away, instead of your 50% going to your ex, it can now go through your estate.
Okay,
Right.
can you explain the difference between
Yeah.
joint tenancy and tenancy in
Mm.
common? Because this does come up.
Yeah.
So with
Yeah.
our transaction, so if you could,
Yes.
Marlene, yeah.
Yes. So when you're jointly on title, as to basically you 100% own something with somebody else, right? So if it's you and I, Nicolene,
Hmm.
we're jointly on title. I pass away, you get that property 100%. It doesn't go through the court system. It doesn't go through anything. It's just
Just
a
mine.
change of title by right of survivorship, where the property then converts to yours.
Okay.
If you're tenants in common, if you're registered as tenants in common on title, right, usually there's a percentage. So if they're just there for mortgage purposes, sometimes it's 1%, and there's a trust declaration that's there just to say, like, I don't really have an interest in this property. I'm just here for the mortgage purposes.
Yep.
The other person really owns it, but you're 1%.
Yep.
But if it's, common law partners or other people that choose it, or a business venture, it's often tenants in common,
Yep.
and you can see 50%, for instance, ownership, right?
Yeah.
So in that situation, if I pass away, Nicola, you're not getting my 50%. It
Yep.
goes through whatever's dictated in my will. So if my will says that I'm leaving it to my children and this is who's going to hold it in trust and whatever, then that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
And the value of my 50% goes through the probate process. That's a different conversation.
Yeah. Long
But
one too.
but then it gets passed on to whoever's named in my will, and you don't get it automatically,
That's
right?
so important. Like,
It is so important.
and that difference, and like with these different kinds of ownership, like, and we're getting slightly off topic, but we do see this with co-signers and like when
Yeah,
parents are helping
yeah,
their
right.
kids out to purchase, and it's really an important conversation around ownership. And it's like
Yes.
the fact that it can be changed as well, like when something is happening like this, and that is a possibility, so that it protects interests, is incredibly important and something that people don't know.
It is incredibly important. And, I've heard other family lawyers saying, yes, but it can be dealt with. Like if that happens, it's not likely. If it happens, you know, it can be challenged and reversed and whatever else. But yes, what's that process going to look like? That's
Yeah.
going to look like a whole court ordeal for how
Yeah.
many years, whatever it is, trying to sort that out. Individual, then turns around and sells the property. Now you're dealing with the new purchasers and trying to undo that transaction. Like,
Yeah.
why? Just register it on title.
Yeah.
If one or both of the parties try to do something with the property afterwards or during this transaction, there will be an alert to every real estate lawyer that says, you know, it's been.
Yeah.
So first of all, don't deal with it. And if that individual passes away, it goes through their estate. It doesn't automatically go by, like, just because the other surviving partner presents a death certificate or whatever, they don't
Yeah,
get a right of survivorship. That's not what's happened
that's
here.
not how it's set up, and like
Right.
for a reason. And like these are really interesting things that people should know and don't.
Yeah.
And like it's interesting different ways to protect yourself as well that
Yeah.
maybe aren't traditional known or people look at things. And like, we've talked about cohabitation agreements, we've talked about how to register as tenants on title, all these different things that are so important for going in as
Yeah.
well as coming out. So I think that we're kind of out of time here, Marlene. Like,
Right.
my goodness, like so many things to know. So thank you so much for joining me today. If somebody has any questions for any kind of real estate transaction, but like specifically around this, because this is an area that you really specialize in and are passionate about. How would they find you, Marlene?
Yeah, so you can call me at 416-502-2060 or email us at info@dosslaw.ca. That's DOSSLAW.ca. And our website is www.dosslaw. Yes,
And we talk to Marlene a lot. So if
yeah,
anyone like missed all of that and like they're like,
yeah,
Nicolai, I really need to talk to that incredibly intelligent lawyer that you were chatting with, we have Marlene's contact information and are happy to connect you. And another thing is that Marlene and like ourselves, we're very collaborative in our approach. So we love working with Marlene's office all the time. We love working with the other professionals that she works with because with any real estate transactions, but specifically divorce and separation, it is really important to have a strong team behind you.
yeah.
And both Marlene and I would love to be part of that team for you if you are in that situation. So thanks
100%.
again, Marlene.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Nicole. It's a
My pleasure.
pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for Real Stories in Real Estate. This episode and any others that you'd like to catch up on are available wherever you watch podcasts. So thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to you on the next one.